The moment Logan Kane cocked his pistol, the entire alien arena fell silent. Billions of eyes, some with pupils like slits, others glowing like molten metal, were locked on him. The king himself, Barracks the Undying, tilted his massive horned head, amusement flickering across his reptilian face. No one had ever dared defy him like this. Not in his own Colosseum. Not in his own empire. Not with a simple human weapon. But Logan wasn't just anyone. He was Earth's best fighter, and he just won a duel that should have saved his planet. Instead, he was standing here, realizing too late that the deal was never real. The fight had been a show, a mere spectacle for the Zelther Empire. The moment he dropped his opponent, the alien guards surrounded him, and the king declared him a prize. Not a hero. Not a victor. A prize. Logan had spent his life in fights he wasn't supposed to win. Bar brawls, back alley shootouts, wars in places the government wouldn't admit to sending soldiers. But this? This was new. He had just knocked an 8-foot-tall, four-armed Zelther warrior unconscious with nothing but his fists and a well-placed knee to the jaw. He should be heading home a legend. Instead, he was being dragged toward a throne of jagged obsidian, his arms shackled in cold, living metal that slithered like snakes around his wrists. "You misunderstand, human," Barracks rumbled, his deep, gravelly voice echoing through the arena. "You did not fight for your planet's freedom. You fought to prove your worth. And you have. Gloriously." Logan clenched his jaw, his body aching from the battle. He had trained for this fight, but no training could have prepared him for alien gravity, for the bizarre weapons and tactics he had faced. Yet he had adapted. He always adapted. "I don't do prize," Logan spat, lifting his head to glare at the king. "That wasn't the deal." Barracks chuckled, the sound like distant thunder. "Deals are for equals. You are not my equal. You are a warrior, yes. A fine one. But now you belong to me." The crowd erupted in cheers and guttural alien chants, the excitement of the moment washing over them. The Zelther Empire thrived on combat, and Logan's defiance only made them more entertained. He was something rare, something new. A creature from a lesser planet that had bested one of their own. Logan's mind raced. He needed an out. Fast. He scanned the towering walls of the Colosseum. Guards posted at every exit. No weapons in sight. His hands bound. Options were limited. Then the chains yanked him forward. He stumbled toward the king, who stood from his throne and loomed over him. Barracks was easily 10 feet tall, his armor a mix of obsidian plates and living, chitinous material that pulsed as if breathing. His eyes gleamed with something Logan had seen before. Amusement. The kind a warlord has when toying with a defeated enemy. "You will fight for me now," Barracks declared, his voice booming. "You will learn the ways of the Zelther. You will entertain my people. And if you survive, you will become legend." Logan exhaled sharply, his muscles tensing. "Or I'll shove my boots so far up your—" Before he could finish, the chains around his wrists snapped taut, sending a jolt of energy through his body. It wasn't pain exactly. More like an overwhelming sense of helplessness. His knees buckled for half a second before he caught himself. The crowd laughed. He hated them. He hated this. He had played games with warlords before. Dictators, mercenaries, crime bosses who thought they owned him because they held the bigger gun. He had survived them all. And this oversized, horned space lizard wasn't going to be any different. Barracks leaned in, his massive face only inches from Logan's. "You amuse me, human. But you will learn." Logan smirked despite himself. "I don't do well with lessons." With a flick of his wrist, the king motioned to his guards. The chains tightened again, pulling Logan backward, dragging him toward the dark corridors of the Colosseum's underbelly. The last thing he saw before disappearing into the shadows was the sea of alien faces, their hunger for bloodshed, for dominance. They thought he was broken. They had no idea who they had just taken. The moment the doors slammed shut behind him, the real fight began. The Zelther guards shoved him down a long metallic hallway. Unlike the grand spectacle of the Colosseum, This place was cold, sterile, humming with unseen energy. Logan's boots scraped against the floor as he regained his footing. "Move!" one of the guards growled, prodding him forward with a weapon that looked like a cross between a staff and a cattle prod. Logan considered resisting, but not yet. He needed to see where they were taking him first. After a series of winding halls, they reached a large chamber. At the center stood a towering, transparent cage. Inside, alien warriors of all shapes and sizes were locked in combat. Some had 4 arms, some had tails, others had weapons fused into their bodies. The air was thick with the scent of sweat, blood, and something electric. The Zelther weren't just conquerors. They were collectors. And Logan Kane had just become their newest exhibit. A burly alien with deep red skin and a mouth full of serrated teeth approached. His armor was patchwork, clearly stolen from various battles, and his eyes burned with something between curiosity and disappointment. "So this is the human," the alien rumbled. "Looks soft." Logan sighed, shaking his head. "You guys all say the same thing before you hit the ground." The red-skinned alien grinned, flashing a mouthful of daggers. "I like him." The guards unshackled Logan and threw him inside the cage. He landed on his feet, rolling his shoulders, shaking out the stiffness from the chains. Around him, the warriors paused their sparring, their predatory gazes locking onto him like hungry wolves. Logan Kane wasn't a stranger to danger. But for the first time in his life, he wasn't fighting for a mission, a paycheck, or even survival. He was fighting for freedom. And if there was one thing Earth had always been good at, it was fighting back. Logan Kane woke up to the distant hum of alien machinery, his body sore, his mind sharper than ever. The air smelled different here, thick with something metallic, something unnatural. He had slept on worse, but waking up in a steel-plated cell inside an alien mothership was new even for him. He sat up, rubbing his face, trying to piece together what was next. The last thing he remembered was the fight, the betrayal, and the smug look on King Virax's face. Now he was in some kind of gladiator barracks, surrounded by creatures that looked like they belonged in a nightmare. A sudden clang made him turn. The door to his cell slid open with a low hiss, and standing in the doorway was a towering, 4-armed creature with deep blue skin, a thick mane of white hair, and a pair of piercing yellow eyes. He looked like a cross between a gorilla and a war god, his muscles so dense they looked carved from stone. Logan tensed, preparing for a fight, but the alien only smirked. "You're the human," the creature rumbled, stepping inside as if he owned the place. "The one that embarrassed the king." Logan stretched his neck, feeling the bruises from his last fight settle in. "That depends. If I say yes, are you here to kill me or shake my hand?" The alien let out a deep chuckle. "Neither. If I wanted you dead, you wouldn't have woken up. And I don't shake hands. I'm Ziarga." Logan nodded, taking in the way the other warriors in the barracks gave Ziarga space. He wasn't just another fighter. He was someone important, someone respected or feared. Maybe both. Logan filed that information away. "All right, Ziarga," Logan said. "Mind telling me why I'm still breathing?" "Virax likes to keep his trophies alive," Ziarga said, crossing 2 of his arms while using the other 2 to crack his knuckles. "For now, at least. He sees potential in you. Humans are a novelty, and you? You're unpredictable. That makes you valuable." Logan scoffed. "I don't do valuable. I do free." Ziarga smirked. "Then you're in the wrong place, human." Before Logan could respond, a deafening horn echoed through the chamber. The walls vibrated slightly, and a mechanical voice, cold and emotionless, spoke in an alien tongue before switching to something Logan could understand. "Gladiators, report to the training grounds. Non-compliance will result in immediate termination." Ziarga sighed, rolling his massive shoulders. "Time to see if you survive the first day." Logan had been in war zones, black sites, and underground fight pits, but the Zelther training grounds made all of them look like playgrounds. The moment he stepped into the massive chamber, Logan knew why he had been kept alive. It wasn't just a prison. It was a factory for war. The arena was massive, spanning what looked like several miles, with simulated terrain that shifted at random. Some sections had rocky outcrops, others were metallic jungles filled with razor-sharp structures. Hundreds of alien warriors were already present, each of them looking like they had been bred for combat. Some had natural armor plating, others had additional limbs with built-in weapons. Some were massive, towering creatures with enough bulk to crush a car, while others were lean, fast, and covered in chameleon-like skin that shimmered with each movement. Logan exhaled slowly. He was the only human here. The weakest. The slowest. The least armed. Which meant they would all underestimate him. A booming voice interrupted his thoughts. Standing on a raised platform was a Zelther commander, his armor adorned with glowing symbols that pulsed like veins of magma. His voice cut through the air like a blade. Listen well, gladiators. You fight because you are owned. You survive because you amuse. Fail to entertain, and you die. Fail to evolve, and you die. Refuse to fight, and I will personally rip your spine from your body. Logan gave a slow, unimpressed clap. Well, that's one way to motivate people. The warriors closest to him turned, some narrowing their eyes, others smirking. Ziarga let out a low chuckle. I like you, human. You've got no sense of self-preservation. Yeah, I hear that a lot. The training began without warning. Blades clashed, energy weapons hummed, and the air filled with the roars and screams of battle. There were no teams. It was chaos, a free-for-all where only the strong survived. Logan ducked just as a creature with spiked limbs lunged at him. He rolled to the side, using the creature's momentum against it, sending it crashing into another fighter. He snatched up a fallen weapon, a sleek, curved blade that felt unnaturally light in his hands. Another attacker came, this one moving like liquid, its form shifting with each step. Logan didn't hesitate. He kicked low, sweeping its legs, then drove the blade into its shoulder, pinning it down. He wasn't the strongest. He wasn't the fastest. But he was smart, and he fought dirty. As the battle raged on, Logan realized something. The warriors around him weren't just fighting for survival. They were watching him. Testing him. The Zelther were a warlike species, and they didn't just kill the weak. They studied the dangerous ones. By the time the training session ended, Logan was bruised, bloody, and breathing hard, but he was still standing. A few of the warriors gave him nods of acknowledgement. Not respect. Not yet. But recognition. Later that night, as Logan sat in his cell, tending to his wounds with a rag that smelled like chemicals, Ziarga leaned against the wall outside. You surprised them, the alien said. Logan shrugged. I'm full of surprises. Ziarga studied him for a moment before speaking again. There's a way out of here. Logan paused, his fingers tightening around the rag. I'm listening. Ziarga stepped inside, lowering his voice. There are others who want to see barracks fall. A rebellion. Logan exhaled. He had played this game before. Underground resistance, covert operations, plans that always came with a body count. But this time, it wasn't Earth. It wasn't his war. And yet, looking around at the cages, the collars, the warriors forced to fight for someone else's amusement, he realized something. It was still his fight. He leaned forward, his bruised face splitting into a grin. Tell me more. Logan had broken out of military prisons, enemy compounds, and places that had no doors, but breaking out of an alien empire's flagship was going to be a first. He sat on the edge of his cot, staring at the ceiling of his cell, listening to the hum of unseen energy coursing through the walls. Every inch of this place was alive, pulsing with alien technology designed to keep creatures like him locked in. He tapped his fingers against his knee, thinking, calculating. The rebellion Ziarga had mentioned wasn't just a whispered rumor. It was real. And it was the only way out. The door to his cell slid open with a sharp hiss. Ziarga stood in the doorway, arms crossed, expression unreadable. Logan had seen this look before. Soldiers, prisoners, revolutionaries, they all wore it when something big was about to go down. It's happening tonight, Ziarga said, voice low. Logan stood, cracking his neck. About time. They moved fast, weaving through the dimly lit corridors of the barracks, avoiding patrols, blending in with the routine of the ship. The Zelther guards were disciplined but arrogant, believing their prisoners too broken to fight back. That arrogance was going to be their downfall. Rylus was waiting for them near the armory, her violet skin almost glowing under the artificial lighting. She wore a cloak that concealed her royal insignia, her eyes sharp and focused. Logan had seen that look before too. She wasn't just a princess. She was a soldier. "The security grid will be down for 6 minutes," Rylus said. "That's all the time we have." Logan smirked. "Plenty." Ziarga pressed his massive hand against a panel on the wall, and a section slid open, revealing a hidden passage. Logan followed them inside, his instincts sharp, every sense heightened. The rebellion wasn't just trying to escape. They were trying to take the ship. The armory was a treasure trove of alien weaponry. Blades that vibrated at impossible speeds, rifles that fired plasma rounds, and armor that shimmered with adaptive shielding. Logan ignored most of it. He walked straight to a table where his gear was laid out, untouched. His pistol was still there, the magazine loaded, the grip familiar. He picked it up, feeling the weight of it in his hands. Rylus raised an eyebrow. "Out of all the weapons here, you're choosing that?" Logan grinned. This is personal." Ziarga chuckled. "You humans and your primitive weapons." Logan holstered the pistol, strapping a plasma knife to his side as backup. "You'd be surprised what a primitive weapon can do." The alarms went off before they could move. Logan swore under his breath. The rebellion had started early. "Change of plans?" Rylus said, drawing a blade from her belt. "We fight our way out." The corridors erupted in chaos. The rebellion had ignited like wildfire, warriors clashing against the king's forces. Logan moved with practiced precision, ducking under an energy blast, returning fire with his pistol. The first Zelther guard he shot stumbled back, stunned by the unexpected impact of a ballistic weapon. Plasma weapons were clean, efficient. Bullets? Bullets made a mess. Ziarga fought like a living tank, his forearms swinging with bone-crushing force, knocking guards aside like ragdolls. Rylus moved like a shadow, her blade finding weak points in Zelther armor, her strikes fast and lethal. Logan grabbed a fallen Zelther rifle, checking its charge. Fully loaded. He slung it over his shoulder. He wasn't above adapting. They pushed forward, deeper into the ship. The plan had shifted. No more sneaking. No more quiet exits. This was war. The control room was the key. If they could take it, they could override the security, shut down the lockdown procedures, and turn the ship against barracks. But it wasn't going to be easy. A group of elite Zelther warriors blocked their path, each one clad in reinforced armor, their weapons humming with deadly energy. Logan exhaled sharply. "All right," he muttered. "Let's see how good they really are." The fight was brutal. Logan ducked under a sweeping blade, firing point-blank into an unarmored section of an enemy's torso. Ziarga caught another by the throat, lifting him effortlessly and slamming him into the wall. Rylus moved like lightning, her blades slicing through the gaps in their armor with surgical precision. Logan reloaded, ejecting the spent magazine and slamming a new one into place. He cocked the pistol, the sound sharp, definitive. One of the Zelther warriors hesitated at the sound. Logan grinned. "Yeah, you should run." The warrior charged instead. Logan shot him twice. The corridor was littered with bodies when they finally reached the control room. Rylus hacked the door panel, overriding the security. The door slid open, revealing a massive chamber lined with glowing consoles and a central throne-like chair where Viraxa's second-in-command sat, watching the chaos unfold on a large screen. The alien commander turned slowly, unimpressed. "You think you've won?" Logan raised his pistol. "I think you're in my chair." The commander lunged. Logan shot him mid-stride, the bullet tearing through his skull. The body hit the floor with a dull thud. Ziarga stepped over the corpse, tapping at the control panel. "Shutting down security now." The ship shuddered as the lockdown protocols were disabled. Rebellion forces surged through the corridors, overtaking the guards. The tide had turned. Then the ship's intercom crackled to life. "You disappoint me, human." Logan froze. The voice was deep, powerful. "Barracks. You truly believe you can take my throne? You are nothing. A pet that has forgotten its place." Logan exhaled, rolling his shoulders. "Yeah? Then come remind me." The intercom went silent. Then the entire room trembled. The doors at the far end of the control chamber exploded inward, and Barracks stepped through the smoke, his obsidian armor gleaming under the lights. He was bigger than Logan remembered. Taller. More monstrous. His eyes locked onto Logan with cold amusement. "No more games?" Barracks rumbled. "This time, I break you." Logan cocked his pistol. "You can try." Barracks moved first, faster than anything his size should have been. Logan barely had time to dodge as a massive fist shattered the console behind him. Sparks flew. Logan fired, his bullets ricocheting off Barracks's armor. The king grinned. "Your human weapons are useless." Logan smirked. "Not all of them." With a flick of his wrist, he activated the plasma knife at his belt, the blade humming with deadly energy. Barracks lunged. Logan sidestepped, bringing the knife up. It sank into Barracks's side. The king roared in pain. For the first time, Logan saw fear in his eyes. "You talk too much," Logan muttered. Barracks staggered back, clutching his wound. The rebellion forces swarmed into the chamber, weapons raised. Logan aimed his pistol at the king's head. "Looks like your empire just changed management." The entire control room was filled with the tension of a battle that hadn't finished yet. Barracks stood there, gripping his wounded side, his obsidian armor cracked where Logan's plasma knife had found its mark. He was breathing heavily, not from exhaustion, but from rage. The great warlord, the king of the Zelther Empire, had never been wounded like this. His soldiers were gone, his warship compromised, and the rebellion was in full force. But Logan knew one thing about men like Barracks. They didn't accept defeat. They burned everything before they ever admitted they lost. Barracks's lips curled into something between a snarl and a grin, his teeth razor sharp, his golden eyes filled with something dangerous. Logan kept his pistol leveled at him, finger on the trigger, but he wasn't dumb enough to assume this was over. He'd fought enough men, human and otherwise, to know when someone was about to make their last desperate move. "You think you've won?" Barracks rumbled, voice like a storm rolling over a battlefield. "You think I built an empire just to let a primitive creature take it from me?" Logan exhaled slowly. He wasn't in the mood for a villainous monologue. "You talk too much," he said, firing a shot straight into Barracks's shoulder. The impact made the king stagger, but he didn't fall. His armor was thick, reinforced with energy plating that absorbed most of the damage, but Logan wasn't trying to kill him with bullets. He was trying to piss him off. And it worked. Barracks let out a roar that shook the chamber, his entire body crackling with energy. His wounds seemed to fuel him instead of weaken him. Logan saw the king's muscles tense, and before he could react, Barracks moved with terrifying speed. He crossed the distance between them in an instant, his massive hand grabbing Logan by the throat and lifting him off the ground like he weighed nothing. The force of the grip made Logan's vision blur for a second, but he had been in worse spots. His hand snapped up, slamming his plasma knife into Barracks's wrist. The king grunted, his grip loosening just enough for Logan to twist free and land on his feet. He didn't hesitate. He fired again, this time aiming for the joints in Barracks's armor, hitting him in the knee. The shot did what it was supposed to. The king staggered. Ziarga and Rylus were already moving, flanking the Zelther warlord. Ziarga, with his 4 powerful arms, grabbed Barracks from behind, locking him in place while Rylus dashed forward with her blade, aiming for the king's exposed side. But Barracks was still too strong. With a vicious jerk, he ripped himself free from Ziarga's grip, spinning with impossible speed and backhanding Rylus so hard she was sent flying across the chamber, crashing into a control panel. Logan felt his heart lurch as he saw Rylus go down, but he didn't have time to check if she was okay. Barracks turned his fury back toward him, eyes burning with pure rage. "I should have crushed you the moment I saw you," Barracks spat, advancing. "Yeah, you probably should have," Logan said, stepping backward, leading him exactly where he wanted. The fight had shifted, but Logan wasn't fighting to kill Barracks. Not yet. He was fighting to get him in position. Behind Barracks, Rylus was getting back to her feet, wincing but still determined. She caught Logan's glance, and he flicked his eyes toward the control panel she had crashed into. She understood immediately. The ship's systems. Rylus began working fast, her fingers moving over the alien controls as Logan kept Barracks focused on him. He fired another shot, hitting Barracks' shoulder again, keeping him angry, keeping him chasing. "You think you can outfight me?" Barracks bellowed, slamming his foot into the ground. The impact sent a shockwave through the floor, nearly throwing Logan off balance. "Not trying to," Logan admitted, firing again, stepping back toward the center of the chamber. Barracks lunged, his massive hands reaching for Logan's throat again. But this time, Logan didn't dodge. He let the king grab him. Because it was exactly where he needed him to be. Barracks grinned triumphantly, tightening his grip. "You lose." Logan smirked, blood on his lips. "Do I?" Behind Barracks, Rylus slammed her fist into the final command on the control panel. The ship lurched. The floor beneath them trembled as the artificial gravity fluctuated. The warship's systems had been reprogrammed to execute a single command. Dump everything in this room into deep space. The emergency hatch behind them exploded open, a violent wind sucking everything toward the void. Alarms blared, red lights flashing. The force of the vacuum ripped chairs, weapons, and debris into the nothingness beyond. Barracks' eyes widened as he realized what was happening. His grip on Logan loosened for a split second. It was all Logan needed. He drove his boot into Barracks' chest, using the force to launch himself backward, grabbing onto a support beam while Barracks staggered toward the open void. The king roared in defiance, slamming his hands into the floor, trying to hold on. But his injuries, his exhaustion, and his own massive weight worked against him. Rylus and Ziarga held onto the control panels, barely avoiding being sucked out. Logan clung to the beam, watching as Barracks' fingers clawed against the floor, inching towards safety. Logan raised his pistol, aiming at the king's hands. "I told you," Logan said, cocking the gun one last time. "You talk too much." He pulled the trigger. The bullet struck Barracks' hand, making him lose his grip. The Zelther King let out a final roar as his body was ripped from the ship, sent spiraling into the endless void of space. And then silence. The hatch sealed itself a second later, the alarms shutting down. Logan exhaled sharply, lowering his gun. It was over. The rebellion forces flooded into the chamber moments later, weapons drawn, expecting a fight. But there was none left. The king was gone. His empire, his rule, his reign of terror, all of it was finished. Ziarga let out a booming laugh, clapping Logan on the back hard enough to nearly knock him over. "I think I like you, human." Rylus was still breathing heavily, staring at the sealed hatch where her father had been moments before. Logan walked over, standing beside her. "You all right?" he asked. She nodded slowly. "I don't know. But he's gone." Logan looked around at the room, the rebels, the Zelther warriors who had once fought for the king but now had no leader. He could feel the weight of it all pressing down on him. "You know what comes next?" Logan asked. Rylus sighed. "Rebuilding. Chaos. Some will resist, some will follow. But the Empire won't be the same." Logan considered that. He had come here as a prisoner. A fighter forced into an arena. Now, he was standing on a warship he had helped overthrow. Ziarga grinned. "So, human. Back to Earth?" Logan looked at his pistol, the weapon that had somehow brought him through all of this. He smirked. "I think I like it out here." The aftermath of war always felt heavier than the battle itself. Logan stood on the bridge of the Zeltha warship, staring out at the vastness of space. The rebellion had won, but victory didn't come with peace. Not yet. The ship still buzzed with tension, a mixture of adrenaline, uncertainty, and the weight of what came next. Without barracks, the Empire had lost its head, but that didn't mean it was going to roll over and die. There would be factions fighting for control, warlords rising from the rubble, and plenty of enemies looking for revenge. The rebels moved through the ship, securing areas, gathering weapons, and tending to the wounded. Some of the Zeltha warriors who had once served the king had surrendered, some had fled, and others had chosen to fight and die rather than accept defeat. Logan understood that mindset. Some men just couldn't let go of power, even when it was slipping through their fingers. Ziarga stepped up beside him, arms crossed, watching the stars with a thoughtful expression. For a warrior who had spent most of his life in chains, he didn't look as relieved as Logan had expected. Logan could tell something was on his mind. "You're too quiet," Logan said. Ziarga let out a low chuckle. "Too much has happened too fast. It doesn't feel real." Logan nodded. "It never does. You spend so much time fighting that when the fight's over, you don't know what to do with yourself." Ziarga turned his head slightly, studying Logan. "And what will you do, human?" That was the question, wasn't it? Logan had spent his entire life moving from one battle to the next, one mission to another. He had never stayed in one place for long. Earth felt far away now, like a memory from another life. The idea of going back, of slipping into the routine of normal life, felt ridiculous. He had just taken down an alien king and survived an intergalactic rebellion. What was he supposed to do now? Sit in a bar and tell war stories to people who would never believe them? Rylus approached, her violet skin still marked with the bruises of battle. She was different now. She had carried herself like a warrior before, but now, there was something else in her eyes. A weight. A responsibility. She was the daughter of Barracks, but she had helped bring him down. And now, the question of what came next rested on her shoulders as much as anyone else's. "The war isn't over," she said, her voice steady but tired. Logan sighed. "It never is." She glanced at him. "I could use your help." That was another question Logan hadn't fully processed yet. He had fought against the Zeltha, but now, standing here, he realized he wasn't just some rogue human anymore. He had become something else. A symbol. The rebellion had seen him fight. They had seen him stand against Barracks and win. Some of them looked at him like a leader, even if he wasn't one. That was dangerous. He had never wanted to be someone people followed. But here he was. Ziarga grinned. "The human stays, then?" Logan rubbed his jaw, considering. "If I did, what's the plan?" Rylus looked back out into space, her expression unreadable. Barracks was only part of the problem. His generals, his warlords, they won't just accept that things have changed. Some will come for revenge. Others will try to claim the throne for themselves. And the Empire, it's massive. There are still thousands of planets under Zeltha control. Logan let out a low whistle. "That's a hell of a mess." Rylus exhaled. "That's why I need people who can fight." Logan knew what she was asking, even if she didn't say it outright. He wasn't just another warrior in this fight. He had proven something when he beat Barracks. He had proven that the Zeltha weren't invincible. He had shown the Empire's enemies that their rulers could bleed. That they could lose. And now, that made him valuable. He thought about Earth. About home. About the possibility of just walking away from all of this, getting on a ship, heading back, and pretending this was just another chapter in a long and violent life. He could do it. He could leave. But he wouldn't. Because even as much as he hated war, he hated unfinished fights even more. "You're gonna need more than just fighters," Logan said. "You're gonna need strategy. You're gonna need people who don't just know how to win battles but how to end wars." Rylus nodded. "I know." Logan glanced at Ziarga. "What about you, big guy? You planning on settling down, or do you feel like wrecking a few more warlords? Ziarga laughed, a deep, booming sound that echoed through the bridge. I go where the fight takes me. Logan smirked. Good. Because I think we're just getting started. A message came through the ship's communication system. One of the rebel leaders was on another captured warship, reporting in. More Zelther forces were retreating, but some were gathering at a nearby outpost, preparing for what looked like a counterattack. The fight wasn't done. Logan cracked his knuckles. Guess that means we don't get a victory party. Rylus rolled her eyes. Do you ever stop making jokes? Logan grinned. Not while I'm still breathing. Ziarga clapped him on the back. I like you, human? Logan smirked. You keep saying that. Starting to think you've got a crush on me. Rylus sighed. And now I regret asking for your help. Logan laughed, shaking his head. He had no idea what the future held, but for the first time in a long time, he wasn't running toward the next paycheck or the next meaningless fight. This time, the fight actually mattered. And he wasn't walking away from it. He holstered his pistol, staring at the view beyond the glass, the vastness of the universe stretching out before them. All right, he said. Let's go start some trouble.